Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Electoral News Network. I'm Brian Armstrong alongside Jake Dyer. And today we've got another episode here for you. Hopefully, another hour-long live stream in which we'll hopefully answer any questions that you all have for us tonight. But two of the main topics that we're going to be covering are going to be prescription drug prices and some of the regulations that go into those processes, which was a question that a friend of Jake's actually brought up to him and wanted him to cover tonight. And then kind of going into the Electoral College, giving you some of the history, some of the conceptions, misconceptions, things of that nature, and kind of giving everybody in the audience a little bit better of an understanding on that. I'm a bit under the weather, so I'll be doing my best to not cough into the mic. I'll try and mute myself. But outside of that, we're going to go ahead and get started with probably what I assume will be a new tradition or something that we do every single show. Um, I use Ground News. They're not a sponsor, obviously, but I use Ground News in order to aggregate some of the news stories that I kind of want to talk about. Um, and we're going to go every week, starting off, we're going to go with the top three stories that are in US politics and the US economy. And I'm going to provide those links to Zach, and he's going to post those in the chat for you guys to view at your own leisure. Ground News is free. I think they do have a limit as to how many free articles you can view in a day. Um, and you can subscribe. Obviously, you don't have to, but they do allow you to go in and view multiple stories in a certain day. Ground News is great because it provides, a great visual of who's covering the story. Obviously, there's a lot of implicit bias for a lot of news outlets out there, and they have their own ways to spin things and put certain words into the story. Um, and this shows you some more of the right leaning, some more of the left leaning, and then some of the center leaning outlets. And you can view how they cover the story and get a better understanding of what really happened with a certain news outcome. So the first things that we're going to be posting are the individual who killed Laken Riley, who was an individual who was murdered in 2022. That man was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This was a very contentious argument during the 2024 presidential election, and was something that the Republicans used in order to highlight the dangers of illegal immigrants coming across the border into the United States and posing a danger to citizens. Just want to put a caveat out there. There's been multiple studies that you illegal immigrants cause less crime than that of naturally born American citizens. There are sources and documents out there if you'd like to view those. We don't have those links at this time, but we do have a link directly to the story, so feel free to check it out if you're curious about that. Next, we have the U.S. vetoes the UN Security Council's resolution on Gaza ceasefire. Again, another very contentious portion of the 2024 election was the Israel-Gaza war, and the United States again on Wednesday vetoed the UN Security Council's resolution for a ceasefire in Israel's war in Gaza. So that is that. And then lastly, in the U.S. politics news, House Ethics Committee to keep Gates' report under wraps. Right now, Matt Gaetz, who is currently on the bump for getting the AG nomination from Donald Trump, is under an ethics committee investigation um, for potentially violating House ethics due to the fact that he may have slept with a minor, and the House congressional members want to keep that report under wraps, and the Senate members have said they wish to see that report. Both Democrat and Republican senators say that they wish to see that. So that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Um, Next, we have the U.S. economy links that Zachary has. Billionaire Gautam Adani, a charge from New York in massive fraud. So Adani Group, which was his basically one of his conglomerates that he owned, uh, has been indicted on multiple fraud charges. Archegos Bill Huang has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for massive U.S. fraud. So they're cracking down on fraud. Don't commit fraud. You will go to jail, even if you're a billionaire. um, and then last but not least, Delta CEO says Trump's administration approach to regulation could be a breath of fresh air. Obviously, it's no secret that Republicans have kind of run on a deregulation campaign when it comes to the business sector. So it's not a huge shock that some CEOs are excited about those potential outcomes. Outside of that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jake so he can cover what he would like to cover in regards to prescription drugs.
Hello, everybody. So my the way I kind of want to approach this is, m- and this might sound like a bad idea or whatever, but I'm just trying to gauge where people are at and what they're thinking about. So if you have an idea or a topic or something that's interesting to you, and you want me to talk about it, feel free to send it to me. Send it to Zachary, Brian, whoever, and I can do my own research and I can um, kind of look it up and go from there and do my own research and provide to you kind of like the background of it and like the basics of what's going on with whatever topic that the viewers may have. So for this one, my buddy came up with this topic and I did some research and it's about the 340B drug pricing program. Um, So it was established in 1992. It's a federal program aimed at providing eligible healthcare organizations, known as covered entities, with access to outpatient drugs at significantly reduced prices. So the purpose would be cost savings. The primary objective is to enable covered entities to stretch scarce federal reaching more eligible patients and providing more comprehensive services. Um, it goes hand in hand with patient support. Savings from the program help covered entities offer medication and services to undeserved populations, quote unquote undeserved.
I think
Um,
you underserved. Under,
Underserved. Sorry, I
underserved.
did not spell that correctly.
It's all good.
That
Hi,
is my
Megan, by the
bad.
way.
Yeah. So, um,
We're
and
good.
then
Sorry.
talking about eligibility for these patients, covered entities. These include hospitals that serve a large number of uninsured and low-income patients, as well as certain federal grantees, such as community health centers, AIDS clinics, and family planning clinics. Criteria: hospitals must meet specific criteria, such as being nonprofit, government owned, or having a specific patient mix that includes a high percentage of Medicare and Medicaid patients. Manufacturers, so and then then it goes into wow, I cannot talk. Then it goes into drug discounts. Um, Manufacturers participating in Medicaid must provide discounts on outpatient drugs to covered entities, often 20 to 50% of the drug's average wholesale price. The calculation comes from the discounts are calculated based on statutory formula that considers the average manufacturer price and the best price offered by these manufacturers. Um, so the HRSA, the the Health Resources and Services Administration administers the program, ensuring compliance through audits and regulations, registration and recertification. Covered entities must register for the program and recertify annually to maintain their status. So now I'll move into like the benefits and the impact, and then I'll talk about some of the court cases, and then the like challenges that are facing with the 340B drug pricing program is facing. So um, savings are often used to expand services, reduce patient costs, and support community health initiatives. It provides financial relief financial relief to hospitals and clinics uh, sa- they use these savings to stay financially viable while serving vulnerable populations. Some challenge and criticisms. Um, so the big challenges and criticisms are the program integrity, the impact on the manufacturers, and the legislative and regulatory changes that are facing the program. So, concerns over misuse and diversion of 340B drugs to ineligible patients or entities have prompted calls for stricter oversight and transparency. Um, some argue that the program's growth and the resulting financial impact on drug manufacturers could lead to higher drug prices for others. Um, some recent developments. Um, the legislative and regulatory changes, there have been ongoing discussions about refining eligibility criteria, enhancing transparency, and addressing potential abuses in the program. I have some some court cases that came out from the past few years that I also want to talk about. So I'll get into those in just a second. But some background. Um, so the one is the Medicare reimbursement reduction case. Some background on this case: the Department of Health and Human Services implemented cuts to Medicare reimbursement rates for 340B drugs in 2018, reducing them by 28%. This was challenged by the American Hospital Association, the AHA, and other healthcare groups, arguing that the cuts violated the law. The court's decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the AHA in 2020, ordering HHS to restore the cuts. The court found that HHS exceeded its authority under the Social Security Act by imposing such deep cuts without proper congressional authorization. Um, the implications that came from this, it required HHS to reimburse hospitals at the statutory rate for 340B drugs, reversing the cuts. The case emphasized the limits of executive power in making adjustments to Medicare reimbursement without congressional approval. The second case is the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America versus HHS, the pricing dispute. Some background. Excuse me. Excuse me. Uh, the trade group representing drug manufacturers sued HHS over the implementation of the 340B discount requirement. They argued that the program's expansion and discount requirements were burdensome and unfairly impacted the pricing of drugs for non 340B entities. The court's decision. In 2018, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia sided with FIRMA, ruling that HHS did not have the authority to set mandatory 340B discounts for drugs administered in outpatient settings.
Jake,
Yes,
we got a question from Cole Dyer. What qualifies as a 340B
340B
drug?
drug.
Yep, if you have that answer.
Yeah, yeah. Let me. It's in here somewhere.
If anybody else has
Sorry.
any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Thanks for tuning in, Morgan and Cole.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it in my notes.
All good. So far, we've got some consistent viewers I see, so heck yeah. Feel free to like this, share, post it on your Facebook, things of that nature. If you're not too embarrassed to share our
So,
faces around.
I found it. A
Okay.
340B drug is an outpatient drug that is sold at a discounted price to eligible healthcare organizations. So it's basically a drug that you could get that's discounted price to sold from the manufacturer to the healthcare organization at a lower rate,
But
basically.
it's not like it's not like your over-the-counter Tylenol. This is like a more prescription drug,
Prescription drug,
like a
if you're
heart
leaving
medication.
Yeah, like a harder medication when you're leaving the hospital or leaving some type of care
Hmm.
and you're getting prescribed a drug. Basically, that's what that is.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Okay.
because I didn't want people to think that people were getting 5-cent bottle of Tylenol or something like that.
Right, no. No. So where was I? Okay. So the implications with this case, the case raised questions about the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress regarding the setting of drug prices. The decision highlighted tensions between the pharmaceutical companies' pricing models and efforts to expand access to affordable medications. So the third case I have here, and this all, like I said, all falls under the 340B drug pricing program, kind of the litigation, the current like state of it, and what's going on with it. So this third case is Novartis versus HHS, 340B and manufacturer eligibility. So how are you eligible to basically be a part of the program? So Novartis, which is I believe it's a pharmaceutical corporation. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
Sounds right.
th- they um, they challenged HHS interpretation of the 340B program, which required that drugs sold to 340B entities at discounted prices must be provided even in cases where the covered entity was not the ultimate provider of care to the patient receiving the drug. Uh, the court the court's decision, the court sided with HHS for affirming its rules and interpretation of the program. The implications the case had reinforced HHS's broader interpretation of the 340B program, expanding the list of eligible entities and making the rules more inclusive for various providers. Um, then I have two more cases. Um, so the next case is United States versus Amgen Inc., which is I'm I'm pretty sure it's another pharmaceutical company. Um, or is it Amgen? I don't really know. Amgen.
I think it's Amgen.
Um, so the background for this case, the case involved the
Mhm.
compliance of manufacturers with the 340B program's pricing and discount regulations. Amgen was accused of not providing the mandated discounts to certain covered entities. The court decision, the case was settled with Amgen agreeing to pay a substantial settlement fee, resolving allegations that they had not adhered to 340B discount pricing laws. The implications, the case highlighted the importance of strict adherence to the 340B pricing requirements and the legal consequences for manufacturers who did not comply. Uh, the fifth case, Medicare Part B and 340B dispute, various legal challenges. The background on this case, various legal battles arose between healthcare providers, such as hospitals, and HHS over the application of 340B discounts to outpatient Medicare Part B drugs. The issue stemmed from the amount of reimbursement provided for drugs purchased under the 340B program. The court's decision um, ruled that the 340B discount requirement applied even when healthcare providers disagreed with HHS's reimbursement rules in some cases. Um, some implications. The case shows the continued tension between the objectives of the 340B program, providing affordable drugs to vulnerable populations, and the financial interests of both healthcare providers and drug manufacturers. So, in the conclusion, the 340B drug pricing program has faced several legal challenges over the years involving the interpretation of discount eligibility, reimbursement rates, and the extent of HHS's authority. Each of these court cases has had significant impact on the program, shaping its future and highlighting ongoing tensions between pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers, and regulate government regulators. Um, so the 340B pricing program continues to be a vital source of resource for many healthcare providers, helping them serve low income and uninsured patients while facing ongoing scrutiny and calls for reform to ensure its effectiveness and integrity. Um, and again, you can find a lot of this like through the Supreme Court and like um like court documents. You could see like the decisions, do your own research and kind of read about it. It's interesting, and it's interesting to me because my buddy was talking to me about it, and I thought it was something worth looking at. Um, but the HRSA, the Health and Human Resources Administration, issued a federal registrar notice outlining new registration requirements for off-site outpatient hospital facilities in the 340B drug pricing program. After waiving certain requirements during the COVID-19 pandemic, hospitals must now list these facilities on their most recent Medicare cost report and register them in the OPAIS system. I'm not sure I'm guessing it stands for outpatient. It's some outpatient system.
Right.
Um, Covered entities have a 90 days to notify HRSA about the process or face audit risks. The change seeks to improve oversight and compliance, and following the pandemic's exceptional circumstances, you can pull a lot of this information right from the HRSA.gov website. And by no means am I an expert in any of this. I'm not. I didn't go to school for pharmacy or whatever, and I'm not a
Medical
doctor.
medical
Medical research,
prescription law
yeah,
law
yeah.
study.
Yeah, I just think the law behind it and, like, what is going on with it is interesting, but
So
you can kinda see what both sides are trying to accomplish with, this program. What's up?
can you do me a favor? I want
Yeah,
you to look something up while I kind of, just give my overall thoughts about this.
yeah,
Can you look up what it takes to qualify for this program? Like what it takes, like for an individual who's trying to seek out these prescription drugs to be to be eligible for this program. Um,
s
but
okay, I already
yeah.
have it pulled up, yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
To qualify for the 340B, you have to be a patient of covered entity,
Hmm.
and then you have to, um where did it go? Oh, where did it go? Sorry, I didn't have it.
Nope.
I
All good.
just had it. It might be on that HRSA.gov. Um,
Okay. Well, if you want to find it real quick, I mean, I just wanted to kind of give
yeah, I'll take a
my
look.
takeaways were,
Mhm,
that I'm sure as a lot of people know, the Supreme Court has had its run-ins with a lot of people's perception of being very partial one way or another. And I know that one of the articles that you had linked was that the Supreme Court, had a unanimous decision one way or the other. I can't remember exactly what it said,
mhm.
um, but it seemed like there was a definite yin yang approach when it came to a lot of these court decisions. It wasn't very black and white. There were I
A lot
think
of
out of the
gray
five,
area, yeah.
yeah, I think out of
Mhm.
the five you mentioned, I think three went for the HRSA, and the other 2 went towards, like,
For
some of the pharmaceutical providers,
You're
and
correct, yeah.
I get that. Actually, one of them I explicitly agree with. I think if this program was overstepping its jurisdiction without going through Congress, I think that that's definitely something that needs to be done, unless it's implicitly stated that it could do so in cases of emergencies. I know obviously COVID, potentially could have been an impact as to why they were doing that. Um, but yeah, we all have our regulations that we have to stay within the bounds of, whether we're a federal program or not.
Right.
So
Mhm.
I think that's a fair judgment. But again, with that Amgen case, absolutely. Like if they're not adhering to the federal standards, of course you're going to have to pay a settlement to pay out. And I'm glad that it seems like in both cases the court ruled, quite fairly and quite
Yeah, I think I think
tragically.
I think a lot of back and forth went between what the court ruled and kind of what happened. I don't think it was as clear cut on some of them. I just think it was I just think it's interesting to see how you kind of get a taste of like how the court process works too,
Mhm.
especially about like something as important as healthcare and in the just in general.
Well, and I think something else to kind of point out is that you said this program was instituted back in 1992, correct?
Yes, yeah, that is correct.
So, I mean,
That's when it was
here,
established. Yeah.
so this program was established over 32 years ago, and the litigation is still ongoing, and it's still not settled as to what's truly the law of the
Right.
land when it
Yeah.
comes to this program. So I think that just gives people, hopefully it gives people an understanding that, like, you know, even when it comes to something that you genuinely have probably never heard of before listening to this live stream, it has been something that has been going through the litigation through the court system for probably over 30 years, which is longer than both Jake or myself have been alive, and
Yeah.
Zachary for that matter. I mean, you
And
haven't been
it's
alive 32 years, Zachary, either. So,
and
I,
as
Thank God.
new as
yeah,
new dr-
right.
as new drugs as things come out and as people need these drugs, it's just going to be ongoing. I
Hmm.
don't think it's ever going to like litigation's going to be even more extensive 32 years from now.
Right, especially because a new drug's going to come onto the program. Maybe the manufacturer of the drug doesn't want to pay for it, and then you go
You're
down that
right.
rabbit hole, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting and something worth talking about.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and like I said, like if you guys have topics, you guys want to know anything, feel free to message us, message one of us, put it in the chat,
Hmm.
comment on the video,
Yeah, after we're
whatever.
done
I
here,
I love learning about new things, and this was very interesting for me to like do my own research with
responsibly do your own research.
responsibly. Yeah,
Yeah.
responsibly.
All right. Well, I think we're about at the halfway point of our live stream tonight, so I guess I will go ahead and pick up. And, you know, Jake, kind of same thing goes. If you see something in the chat, I'm going to be kind of talking and
Yep.
rambling here. But also, if you have any other questions, feel free to jump in. But I'm going to kind of do a bird's eye view uh, summary of the Electoral College, kind of, where Americans writ large stand on it, and also kind of where it, is it going to go anywhere? And I don't think it is. I'm going to try to avoid my biases on this as the best I can. Um, but I think that I brought up this article that Zachary currently has on the screen here from Pew Research, and this is a multi step um, web page here that has, I think it's 11 different points on it. If you want to hop back to that web page when you get a chance, Zachary. Um,
Is it not up?
so,
Because it should be.
oh, it was just up, but it flipped off. Looks like we're back to the split screen now. If you can't pull it up, it's no big deal.
How about
Oh,
now?
there it is. Okay.
Thanks,
Yep.
OBS.
No worries. All right. So, um, I know that this article right here doesn't explicitly talk about the Electoral College up front. But it does show that a lot of times that Americans can be in favor for something across the board that is widely viewed as popular for both the left and the right. And yet it is something that is probably not going to get passed anytime soon just because of how the political system works. Um, I mean, what we can see right here, front and center, is these top six issues here with broad public support. Obviously, the last one we'll get into does not have majority support, but just the top. limiting the terms that congressional members can serve. 87% of people support that, and I mean that's by all accounts that's a supermajority. If our Congress and Senate worked that way, that would get passed with flying colors, and it would probably be some of the most bipartisan, supported bills ever to be done. But that's not how our Congress works. Um, Same thing with putting a maximum age limit. Uh, for officials in DC. It doesn't say what that age limit is. I'm sure that people would probably change their support based upon the age limit. Obviously, some people would support 60, some people would support 75, so on and so forth. I've seen some people say that it's as soon as you start drawing on Social Security, you should no longer be able to be eligible to be in high political office in the United States. There's also requiring all voters to show government ID. 76% of people support that. Maximum age limit in place for Supreme Court justices. Um, Automatically registering all citizens to vote, which, me personally, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think that would be great. The less I have to do by myself, the better. I mean, honestly, I wish the government could just do my taxes for me. So, um, and then last but not least is increasing the number of justices on the Supreme Court, which does not have a majority, but is still close to that 50-50 range. But everything else above that is strongly in favor. And I mean,
Hey,
when you're talking 62%, that is a large majority of
hey,
Americans who
hey,
agree with that.
Brian.
What's up?
I remember you and I had talked about there ever being more than what 12 justices,
Oh yeah, or it's currently nine right
9,
now.
but
Yeah,
I thought there was part of me thought there was 13 at one point,
yeah,
but
Oregon,
I don't know.
absolutely.
I don't know if that was I couldn't find anything about it. I don't know where I heard that or if it was true, but I didn't know if you had
Um,
found anything on that,
I did
Brian.
I did not take the time to look that up, but I'm sure that's something that we could probably actually, Zachary, if you want to do a quick Google search on this, has there ever been more than nine Supreme Court justices? But as far as I know, there hasn't been. Um, there's the a lot of what I've seen about expanding the Supreme Court is tailored to the fact that there's now 13 circuits in the United States. Therefore, we should expand the court to represent how many circuits there were because that's how we initially got to the count of nine, as far as I know. Again, there might have been more, um, but I don't believe there was. I could be wrong. But yeah, so that's where people have gotten the expansion of the court to match the number of circuits that we have throughout the United States.
So in 1863, there were
Mhm.
10. Uh,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
and then in 1869, it went back to 9, or it went to 9.
Okay.
Uh,
I now,
Okay.
Jake, if you remember correctly, I did say that I don't think that there was ever 12, but I
Yeah.
told you if there was a time in which there were more than nine, it was during the Civil War, and I was
You're right. Yeah, you were right.
okay.
in 1937, Franklin D. Roosevelt proposed a bill to get 15 justices in there. So
Wow,
Wow.
that was a thing that clearly didn't happen. But
correct. Was there any like just that quick Google search you did? Was there any justification as to why he chose 15?
uh, he called it packing the court. He wanted any justice older than 70 to resign. Um,
Okay.
and then he wanted
Yep.
to be the one to, nominate the new justices. Uh, the Senate rejected his plan 70
Hmm.
to 20. So
Uh, Not shocked.
Yeah, not shocked
Quite
either.
quite frankly, I think that that's a huge overstep of power. Just in my opinion, that just want that to be known. I think that any president who tries to explicitly state that they wish to pack the court, and regardless of the Republican or Democrat, um, that's a huge overstep of power, especially if you're forcing justices to resign so that you can then appoint more yourself. That seems like a bit of a reach. Um,
Right.
but anyways, um, on to the Electoral College. So this is going to be kind of a history lesson. Hopefully, it's not going to be as boring as a history lesson. But obviously, I want people to ask questions. So, Morgan Cole, if you're still in the chat, feel free to ask questions if you have any. Um, but yeah, so the Electoral College process was established way back in 1787. So not surprisingly not when the country was founded, um, but it was during the Constitutional Convention as a compromise between um, kind of the elite congressmen and the citizens of the United States. Um, the founding fathers were concerned about there being um, kind of a imbalance of power between the people up at the top and the federal government, and also they wanted to make sure that the people who were voting uh, these individuals in were smart enough to make informed decisions regarding their votes and their choices. So basically what came of this was that in the Article 2 Section 1 of the Constitution, um, they decided that each state um, will appoint electors that will have the sum of its representatives and senators. So, for instance, Vermont has one congressional seat and two senators. Therefore, they get three electoral votes. I believe that is the same with, well, I believe it's the same with Alaska. But for instance, and why they were so influential in the 2024 election, Pennsylvania has, I believe, 19, which means that they have 17 congressional seats and two senatorial seats. Excuse me. Um, yeah, so basically, this system was built in order to, you know, give the people the ability to vote for who they wanted to be president, but then it assigned the electors of the state the privilege and the authority to elect the people that the citizens voted for writ large. Um, Now, technically, they did not have to vote for that person. That is just, that's kind of why there was this whole issue in 2020 is just like were the electors going to certify the election, were they going to vote for the people that the citizens have voted for, things like that. So it was a whole mess. And I mean there's been multiple you know controversial elections. In 1824 John Quincy Adams won despite losing both the popular vote and the electoral votes. um, and the house ended up deciding the outcome because I think the electoral college didn't side with John Quincy Adams. And then there were also, I mean, it's kind of one of those things with the popular vote as well. Obviously, the more recent cases, 2000 with George Bush and Al Gore. Al Gore won the popular vote. George Bush from the Electoral College. The same thing with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Donald Trump won the Electoral College. And that's just how we decide elections in the United States. A lot of countries around the world do use the popular vote to decide their elections, um, but we did this um, so that smaller states could have more representation at the time. Um, Basically, during the initial founding, you had states like maybe Rhode Island or New Jersey that were going and having to compete with states that were, quite frankly, powerhouses like Virginia, New York, things like that. And they wanted to make sure that they had adequate and fair representation in the United States government. Um, so when it comes to some reforms and some ways that we've tried to fix the Electoral College or amend it, I think is the better term. There's actually something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is a mouthful, but it's a NPVIC, um, and that is a which I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently there is a pact. And as of 2024, there are 15 states and DC that have voted to pledge their electors always to the national popular vote winner as of 2024. So I
Hmm.
I didn't know this was a thing,
I
and
didn't either. That's interesting.
yeah, and with my thinking cap on, I'm curious as to how many of these states are voting one side or the other. I would assume just by the fact that DC has joined this that they are primarily Democratic leaning states. Um, and that strikes me as curious just because, there's no guarantee that that state, uh, you know, votes Democratic. Let's just say Virginia, for example. Virginia was close and might as well have been a toss-up state this year, right? So let's
Mhm.
just say they've voted, you know, and they've pledged into this pact, right? So theoretically, if Donald Trump wins the popular vote, which by all accounts he did in 2024, then they signed this pact, then they would have essentially handed over their electors to Donald Trump. And again, this is all, if they were, I don't have the list of the 15 states in front of me. Um, but yeah, just something very interesting. I didn't know that before I started reading about this. Um, Additionally, there have been over 700 proposals that have been introduced to Congress over the years in order to amend the Constitution. Which, fun fact, uh, you have to amend the Constitution in order to change the Electoral College process, which I believe requires a majority. I think 66%, and 60% for the Senate. 66% for Congress, 60% for the Senate, I believe, in order to pass this legislation, which right now in our contentious political environment, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Um, so, but yeah, there have been over 700 proposals that have been introduced, and I kind of want to go into one of the more famous versions of this, and it's because it was probably the closest, um, and that is the 1969 attempt to abolish the Electoral College, which has a name called the, I believe, hopefully I pronounce this right, the Bay Cellar Plan,
What year did
uh,
you say that was, Brian?
1969.
Okay.
So it was the year after Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey, and George Wallace ran in the 1968 election, which obviously Richard Nixon won,
And the moon
and
landing.
and the moon landing. So there's a lot going on in 1969. Um, but yeah, so this case, George Wallace ran a segregationist campaign and carried 5 southern states and won the electoral college. Or sorry, and one did not win the electoral college and won 46 electoral votes, raising fears of faithless electors or possibly no candidate achieving the 270 to win majority in the electoral college, which would have then thrown the decision to the House of Representatives. Um, so Nixon won with 301 votes, but everyone was kind of like freaking out, thinking that, what if this happens again type deal. Um, so Emmanuel Seller, a Democrat from New York, and Birch Bay, a Democrat from Indiana, introduced a constitutional amendment to replace the Electoral College with a direct popular vote um, for presidential elections. Some of the things that they wanted to implement were um, that it would go down to a popular vote. Um, there would be a runoff provision, which is very similar to kind of what happens in Georgia for their elections. Basically, if no candidate reaches a certain percent threshold, um, they go down to like another election runoff. So let's say there's a third party candidate. I think the way that works is like if you have 3 candidates running and nobody reaches 50%, then you knock out the lowest candidate and then you have another election. So I'm pretty sure that's how that works. um, but yeah, so this in this case it would be if no candidate received 40% of the
Has that
popular
ever
vote.
happened?
Oh, in Georgia it did. Yeah, that's how we
Okay.
got Senator Ossoff, I believe. It was either Ossoff or Warnock. I know there's 2 Democratic senators in Georgia right now, and one of them was decided via runoff. I can't remember which one though.
Okay. That's interesting.
Mhm. Yep. But for this case, it would be if no candidate received 40% of the popular vote, a runoff election would be held between the top 2 candidates. Um, and then this would also abolish any electors entirely. So this would be 100% down to the people. So no electoral college any longer. Um, and actually, it received support from Richard Nixon at the time. And there was support from both parties, and there's also support from 80% of Americans at the time, just like a lot of stuff. that we kind of highlighted when we first looked at this. So when this first came to the House, uh, it was passed with a vote of 339 to 70. Just to put that in perspective, 339 people voted aye, 70 voted no. Um, and then it went to the Senate, where it went to the Judiciary Committee, and that is where it met its demise. So it ultimately failed due to the filibuster, um, and it was a coalition of Southern senators and other representatives from other smaller states, mostly because the smaller states didn't want to lose their leverage in the political system. So think of, I'm not saying that they voted against it or filibustered it, but think of that Vermont example. Vermont only has um, three electoral votes, two senators, and one congressional district. So their three electoral votes count a lot more than their um, popular vote, just by numbers. Um, and then the other reason that it kind of failed was due to traditions kind of falling to the wayside. Like they thought the traditions of the federalist government were falling to the wayside, and they didn't want that system to start to dissipate. There's always the people out there who think that the Constitution should never be amended, should never be changed. Um,
It's been
right,
amended 20 some 7 times.
right, and one of them was prohibition.
Yeah.
People don't know that prohibition was an amendment to the Constitution, and then there needed to be another amendment to the Constitution to get rid of prohibition. So things can change, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And then right,
It's not the
uh,
first time it's happened.
exactly. And then one of the last things that kind of put this to bed was uh, there was obviously civil rights tensions going on in the late '60s. There had been vast changes in civil rights all throughout the '60s. So people were kind of on edge, and there was a lot of tension with the southern states, kind of feeling that the civil rights movement was taking too much control of the political system. Um, and that those were the groups that also voted to or also filibustered this this bill. And in order to pass, you need 2/3 majority in the Senate. So that would be 66 votes, and it did not receive that in the Senate. So even though it was supported by the majority, it did not receive the 2/3 necessary. Um, trying to see here.
Now that is that rule, what is the purpose of this 66%?
Um,
Like, why wouldn't it just be a majority?
so I think it is to just to I mean, you're trying to make it so you're not just passing things willy nilly.
Willy-nilly? Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
or you don't want it to be the case where, let's put it this way, with this recent election, right?
Mhm.
So right now, Republicans have the Senate either 53 or 54 to 47, 46, somewhere like that. Unless they get some Democrat support, they can't pass constitutional amendments
Okay.
right now with the current political system. Now, let's just say we were in a less politically charged time. Let's say we all got along, sang kumbaya, and didn't have arguments at the Thanksgiving table. Um,
Right.
then maybe you could have enough Democrats support the Republicans, and vice versa, in order to pass a constitutional amendment. They might not be on the same political side, but they can still potentially support the other side's viewpoint enough to get over that
That
2/3 majority.
right, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
but but if it was 51, all you needed was 51 votes, then there would be a lot of stuff that gets
Just
pushed through.
push through, yeah.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's a ton of stuff that gets pushed through as it is, but those are just normal laws. Those aren't, amendments to the Constitution. And depending on how long you filibuster something, that like you need 66 or 67 votes to break up a filibuster. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, but just to kind of go kind of tie this up all in a neat little bow the best I can. As of 2024, according to Pew Research, which is that link that I sent earlier, 65% of Americans support replacing the electoral college, which is obviously down from the 80% that it was back in 1969. Um, and it is something that's typically supported by Democrats, where the Republicans with up to 82% of Democrats supporting it, while only 47% of Republicans um, supporting it, along with Republican leading independents. Um, so it's kind of hovering around that 62 to 65% of support, and it it's just something that until we get to a less politically charged environment, it's not going to change, in my opinion. Just because I don't think either party wants to give up the power. Just throwing it out this way, if Democrats thought they could win the electoral college every single time and also, could crush the popular vote, they wouldn't care. If Democrats won the electoral vote every single time and didn't have the popular vote, of course they wouldn't want to get rid of the electoral college. So it's all about, what is the objective of the political party in charge, which is why you see a lot of Democrats obviously wanting to go to the popular vote, because 9 times out of 10 they win the popular vote, at least in recent history. This year was the exception. I believe I haven't checked the overall results of the election, but I assume that the Republicans won the popular vote this time. Um, but yeah, so you can see where um, that's why a lot of Democrats support getting rid of the electoral college, because they want it to come down to the popular vote. Because typically, the cities and the more dense populations vote Democratic, and that's obviously where your larger population centers are, and vice versa. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I had in regards to this. I don't see any other questions in the chat. But if anybody has them, Morgan, Cole, Jake, if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer them.
I've been
Zachary, feel
asking
free
them
as well.
as I go.
Yep.
Eh, I had one, and you might have touched on it, but
Mhm.
it's about state size. Does that have anything to do with electoral college, like the size of the state,
Like the actual geographical size?
geographical size?
No, nothing to do with
Okay.
that. Um, the just like so, Alaska, I believe, still only has 3 electoral votes. Might be 4, but I'm pretty sure it's only 3. Uh, and same thing with Vermont.
So it's based off population
Correct.
of the
Solely
state.
based off
Okay.
population. Population.
Okay.
Population that then translates into congressional districts, and then plus your 2 senators. That's how you get your electoral college. Thanks, Morgan. I appreciate that.
So, and if you answered this at some point during that,
Mm,
my bad.
nope,
In
all good.
in your opinion, what do you think needs to happen in the future, like for the electoral college to go away? Like, what scenario do we need to run into for people to come together and actually get rid of it or change it? Either one.
Well, if I I'm gonna come at this from 2 different angles. If I want to be a cynic about it and kind of be a negative Nancy, I think that the best way to get rid of the Electoral College is to do what happened in 1969, and you have a third party candidate who comes out of nowhere and starts really, really crushing electoral votes away from both Democrats and Republicans, and they get scared. Both of them, both main parties get scared, and they go, uh, "What if, what if we lose to these people?" And then next thing you know, they're like, "Okay, we're gonna go to the popular vote because obviously that third party candidate's not gonna get enough votes, but we will. So, so we'll get rid of that." Okay, that's cynic side one. That's the bad side of politics, but I think that could be a motivating factor for some of these individuals in order to potentially get rid of the electoral college. Um, I think that the uh, the best way is that we all kind of find more common ground. We find that slowly over time that the political environment has become less charged. less my side of the highway, more compromise, more bipartisan compromise, and eventually, if we get to a situation where the government is actually starting to govern properly and um, the political ideologies become more aligned, whether the left moves more to the center, the right moves more to the left moves more to the right. Either way, if the factions become more aligned one way or another, I could see that um, leads to at least maybe it's a uh, because right now there's a tie scenario. I mean, it's there's a situation where you could tie the electoral college. So maybe there's a system that gets put into place where the fact that you win the popular vote gives you an extra electoral vote. I don't know,
Do you
but I
do you
I could
think
see
there's
that
a
being a thing.
do you think there's a world where we, not we, but like as a country, right moves left, left moves right? Do you think there's a world where that could happen?
Um, I think that there is a world where, well, the thing is that I guess this is kind of a workaround answer. Yes, I do. Let me
Okay.
just
Hmm.
be straightforward. The answer to that is yes, but I don't think that it is going to be as simple as one group moving towards another or vice
Right.
versa. I think it's all of these groups are constantly moving and you know jostling around and trying to see who has the most influence. Like let's say before 2008, when a lot of the workers were auto workers in downtown Detroit, they worked for the auto
Mm.
union, things like that. Like labor unions were, you wanted their endorsement, you needed their endorsement in order to election. Now their endorsement is, important, but maybe it doesn't win you that election. So
Mm.
what do you have to do to get their votes, right? Uh, let's just say everybody woke up tomorrow and was a farmer, right?
Right.
Suddenly you'd want to make sure that you did everything to make the farmers happy in order to get their vote. So it's all this waxing and waning of like who do you want to support and which party is going to make their coalition out of these individuals and which party is going to make their coalition out of these individuals. Like throughout history, recent history, Republicans have tried to court the evangelicals and they've tried to court the business sectors, while Democrats have tried to court, the scholarly and the union individuals. And that's kind of been the go-to for a while. But you saw in this past election, there were quite a few business individuals who didn't support the Republicans and quite a lot of union uh, people who did. So
Right.
it's not so much the parties changing their ways, it's the people who support the parties, drifting, and then the parties, you know, trying to capture more of their vote. Like now you're going to see, the Republicans are going to try and keep those union supporters who supported them on their side through the next election.
Okay. So once you win them to your side, basically, then it becomes of how do I keep them?
I think it's like once they drift to your side, because I don't
Drift.
think a lot of
Okay.
time, yeah, because I don't think they're inherently targeting them because
Hmm.
they, obviously they want to make sure that their base comes out and supports them,
Right.
right?
Okay.
But
Hmm.
if you suddenly show up in their base, they're like, oh shoot, hi, welcome to the party.
Happy to have you. Yeah.
Yeah, happy, yeah,
Yeah.
we're happy. What can we do to keep you happy? Kind of
Right.
deal.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah, yep. And I think that that's just what politics is and how it's shaping up. Um, I had a buddy of mine. He brought up I think it's Pavlov's. It's either Pavlov's or Pavlov's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. It's Pavlov's the ringing of the bell and the salivating dogs.
Uh,
Yeah. Pavlov.
okay. Oh no, it's Mavlov's or Maslov.
Maslow's. Hold on.
Maslow's. Jesus Christ.
Maslow's. I was like, oh, okay, I know the hierarchy. I know Pavlov's dogs.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
was
good.
I was getting my psychiatrist or my psychologist wrong.
They're old
Um,
ones, but it's all right.
yeah. But You know,
that's a good way to look at it though, or interesting, not good, but like interesting way to look at it. Maslow's the hierarchy of needs.
yeah. So and one of the so obviously the way that this works, and here, hopefully this doesn't throw you off too much, Zachary. But I do want to show this for the people in the chat because I think it highlights a lot of why. Oh, you got it. Okay, perfect. But I think that this highlights a lot of why the Republicans won this election, quite frankly. Um,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
wi-
this is interesting. I can definitely see
because,
where you're gonna go. So go ahead, Brian.
yeah, because obviously, you know, when people are struggling or that they're looking for something to like focus on for their own personal improvement, they're starting at the bottom, your psychological needs, going all the way up to self-actualization. You have to start at the base. So breathing, very important. If you don't do that, you die. Food, you don't have that, you die. Water, you don't have that, you die. So on and so forth. Now, we go up to the next step, which is safety and security, which if you think of the entire Republican campaign and the ads that they were running, it was immigration, um, trans uh, trans individuals and women's sports. It was your jobs, which Democrats run on some of this stuff too. But your family, your social values, all that stuff. Basically,
Family's a big was a huge one.
mhm. And Republicans writ large focused on that orange bar there, which means that if people are feeling scared, frustrated, worried, they're going to lock onto that tier, then they're going to lock into the yellow tier or the green tier or the purple tier. Because if we're being honest, the Democrats ran on love and belonging and self-esteem more than they ran on safety and security. I mean, sure, they ran on the fact
Well,
that,
it's a-
you
it's
know,
a,
go ahead.
it's almost like the safety and they found that sense of safety and security. Then they went to within that they found their love and belonging. If you
Yeah,
understand what I'm saying there, it's
right.
kind of like they found that sense of community and their belonging within that safe. They found like-minded people that safety and security
Mhm.
that had the same simple like values. Took that and they found that community basically.
Right. But yeah, so I think that like this just goes to show that this does play an important role in how politics are shaped and how political campaigns and advertisements are formatted towards the general public. I mean, if you are somebody who is perceiving that the world around you is bad, the economy's bad, everything you're struggling, and in these might be totally valid in every individual's case. You're going to focus on those lower base needs, and whatever campaign focuses on delivering the solution to those base needs more, that will resonate with you more. And I know that the Republicans did base a lot of their campaigning on that orange bar down there, and it resonated, it worked with people, while the Democrats in that yellow, green, and slightly orange didn't. People didn't care. People weren't into the love and the hope message. And, you know, that's their prerogative. They were focused on their safety and their security. And the Republicans were able to tap into that more, and they were able to deliver on that message to people. We'll see if they deliver on that promise in the next 4 years, but they certainly delivered on the message and they drove it home. And that's why Donald Trump is your president elect. So just very, very interesting to think of and
Yeah, that's
consider when
interesting.
you're wondering why this election turned out the way it did.
I would have never thought to look at it through the Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Especially because, we've and
But that's
quite frankly,
interesting because I mean, it is psychology.
oh, absolutely. I mean, and I told people before the election, before the election even happened, I said fear sells. We learned that in my entrepreneurship class at Bowling Green. Your fear or the fear of missing out or something. Oh, got something you want to share with the
You could
class, Zachary?
Go no, no, go on.
you could you could you could drive a lot with with FOMO. You could get people to do a lot with the fear of missing out.
Hmm. And yeah, Morgan, it's definitely a new way to look at it. It's just the thing is that well, and imagine it this way. So think of it like this: you are a person who never votes, right? You've never voted. You really don't care, but you do, regardless of what anybody says. You see that your egg prices have gone up $1.50 for a dozen. You see that your ground beef has gone up 62 cents a pound. You know, for somebody who's disaffectionate with politics writ large, somebody who's tapped out, somebody who doesn't see a lot of this stuff on a day-to-day basis, y- you're not sitting in on town halls. You're not watching Congress pass laws and legislation. You don't give two shits, quite frankly. You're just saying, I've got 3 kids at home. I need to feed them. And maybe, I'm only making $16 an hour working at this, auto repair shop, changing people's oil for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day. I don't care. This person promised me that he's going to lower my prices. And he's also promised me that he's going to take away somebody who could potentially take my job. I'm going to vote for
Yeah.
that guy because my hierarchy of
Mm.
needs, I'm at the lower tier. I need you to provide this to me because that's where I'm at. And I'll be damned if I'm going to go a tier lower. So I have to stay at this tier. And this guy's promising me everything at this tier. These people are promising me these 2 tiers, 3 tiers above me. I don't have time for that. I can't. I got other stuff to work on. I can't focus on like what is this? Love your neighbor. I don't care. I have
So
to focus on me. Like you know what I
they
mean? Like it's
they
nothing
really
personal against those people.
right,
Like those
it
people, yeah, those might
they
be
really
good
hit on
people.
the the struggling people.
Yes, that they want to highlight the struggle and they want those people
Mhm.
who are struggling to relate to that message more.
Right.
It's
That's
very
interesting.
interesting. Yep.
Yeah, it is interesting. Wow.
I'll tell you who sent me that after the stream
Okay,
is
yeah,
over.
yeah.
They wanted to
Alright.
remain anonymous, so
No, that's fine, yeah, just let me
yeah.
know. I'd be curious. Do I know this person?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Mm.
Alright.
All right. Well, unless you have any comments, concerns, questions, Zachary, I think we can wrap up this episode.
Nothing about any of the stuff you guys were talking about, but for those who are interested in volcanoes and Iceland, your favorite
Yes.
volcano and mine is at it
Me.
again. Uh, I
What
don't know if
volcano
it.
is that?
Oh, well, some
Oh,
Icelandic
good.
name that.
Good luck saying that.
Yeah, that one that's doing the do all the time.
Alright.
Yep.
So
The Mountain Dew, the volcano dew.
yeah, that one.
Yep.
Uh, so
It
yeah, that's all.
do.
I think
Get it.
it started erupting again either today or yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so that's
Interesting.
Hopefully, no communities in danger like the eruption a few months ago.
yeah. So
Mm.
far, nothing that I've seen of
Okay.
anything actually in danger. So at this point, it is just fun to look at.
Good.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
fun.
that's all I
Love
have.
a good volcano.
Alrighty.
Unless it's
Well,
damaging,
right.
people
Mount St.
and
Helens.
communities, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes this episode of the Neutral News Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to like, add any additional comments on the video once it's posted to YouTube. Feel free to share the link as well. And, even if you don't share the link, feel free to tell your friends that we'll be doing this, hopefully, if all goes well, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. until about, 9 or whenever we decide to call it quits. But I'm Brian.
I'm Jake. Let me know if you have any topics you want me to research and dive more into. Anything you want more knowledge on. Um, happy to provide what I can.
Yeah, anything
All right.
specific that anybody wants covered, please tell us.
Yep. Absolutely. And with that, have a great evening, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
See you, everybody.